I haven't bought a tub of margarine since I left, and I don't plan to start now. Today I am standing in front of a dairy case with 6 tubs and bricks in my cart, and I am going to read every word on every one of them before I tell you which ones deserve a place in your refrigerator. Here is the first open loop. One of these products sitting on a grocery shelf right now is not legally allowed to use the word butter on its own front label without a qualifier. And I will tell you which one and why before this video ends. Here is the second. There are 3 brands I would buy again without hesitation, and one of them surprised me. Before I get into any of this, I want to ask you something. Which brand of butter is sitting in your refrigerator door right now? Not the one you wish you bought, the one that is actually there. Hold that thought, because by the end of this, you may want to go check the label again. Butter matters to almost everyone who reads a recipe, who bakes bread, who spreads something on toast in the morning. It is one of the oldest foods there is, cream, churned, salted or not. And yet the dairy case has gotten so crowded with tubs that look like butter, that talk like butter, and sit right next to butter, that most people standing there are making a guess instead of a decision. I did not grow up confused about butter. We made it ourselves in a cool room off the kitchen, and there was one ingredient, sometimes 2. So when I walk into a modern grocery store and see a wall of options stacked 3 shelves high, I read the back before I trust the front. Real butter by federal standard has to contain a minimum milk fat percentage to earn that word on the label. And the precise threshold is something I want to state carefully rather than guess at, so I am marking it here as a number I have not yet confirmed and will not invent. What I can tell you is what is actually printed on each package I am holding, and that is where the real verdict comes from, not from a number I half remember from somewhere. Let's start with Kirkland's signature butter from Costco. The ingredient list on the package I am holding shows cream and salt, and the milk fat percentage printed on the label is something I am still confirming directly from Costco's current packaging before I state it as fact. So consider that number an open question, a loud than a settled one. Here is what I can say plainly. If the ingredients are limited to cream and salt, that is the structure of real butter, and there is nothing on this label that resembles a vegetable oil blend or an emulsifier. The plain language conclusion is that on ingredients alone, Kirkland's butter reads as legitimate. My verdict, once the percentage is confirmed, is that this is a butter worth trusting on the shelf, provided the number on your own tub matches what I am describing here, because I want you checking your label, not just taking my word for it. Now, I want to be fair about something, because that admission matters. I bought the cheapest tub in that dairy case for years, blindly, because it was cheap, before I understood that the word on the front does not always mean what I assumed it meant. I trusted packaging the same way most people do, until I started turning tubs over and reading them the way I am reading them for you right now. Walmart's Great Value Butter is next. The ingredient list I am reading shows cream and salt as well, which again matches the basic structure expected of real butter. The exact milk fat percentage on this particular package is something I am marking as unconfirmed rather than stated, because I will not put a number on a label I have not personally verified against Walmart's current packaging. Here is the fact as I can state it. The ingredient list is short. The plain language conclusion is that a short list built from cream and salt is consistent with butter, as it has always been understood. The verdict is this. Great value, on the ingredients I can read directly, is not the villain of this list. It earns more credit here than its price tag might suggest, and price alone tells you nothing about what is actually inside the tub. Read that again. Price alone tells you nothing about what is actually inside the tub. I want to pause on that point a moment longer, because it is the single biggest assumption I see people carry into a grocery store. There is an instinct to believe that the most expensive option on a shelf must be the most honest one, and that the cheapest option must be cutting some corner you cannot see. Sometimes that is true. Often it is not. The only way to know which case you are looking at is to stop guessing and start reading. Every single time, regardless of what the price sticker says. Now here is where the dairy case gets genuinely confusing, and where the second open loop closes. I can't believe it's not butter is sitting 2 shelves down from real butter, in similar tub packaging, using the word butter directly in its own name. I am holding the package now, and the ingredient list is longer than a label for real butter has any reason to be. Water, oils, and a list of additional ingredients that I want to confirm in full before I describe every single one by name, so I am marking the complete ingredient list here as something still being verified. What I can state with confidence, because it requires no further verification, is this. The product is labelled as a spread, not as butter on its own packaging, which is exactly why federal standards require a different word be used somewhere on that front label. The plain language conclusion is straightforward. Cream is not the primary ingredient here. The verdict is this. This product is a vegetable oil spread wearing butter's name, and that is not an accusation that anyone broke a law or lied to you, because the spread label is sitting right there in smaller print exactly where it is required to be. It is simply a reminder that the front of a package and the back of a package are sometimes telling 2 different stories, and only one of them is bound by law to be accurate. That is not butter. That is what was left when the cream was taken out of the equation entirely. I want to slow down here, because this is the moment most people skip. When a product cannot legally use the word butter on its own, by itself, without a qualifier like spread or blend sitting somewhere nearby, that tells you something important about what is and is not inside. It does not mean the company did anything wrong. It means the category itself has rules, and reading past the front cover is the only way to know which side of those rules a tub falls on. The front of a tub is built by a marketing department. The back of a tub is built by a legal requirement. Those are 2 very different motivations, and they do not always point in the same direction. This next part is exactly where I want you to stop scrolling and think about your own identity for a second, not mine. I am not asking you to trust me because I left an old order community in Holmes County, Ohio. I am asking you to become the kind of person who turns the package around before you put it in the cart. That habit is worth more to you long-term than any single verdict I give you today. If that is the kind of person you want to be at the dairy case from now on, that is the real subscription this channel is asking for. Not a button, a habit you carry with you long after this video ends. Before I go further, I want to be honest about the limits of everything I am telling you. Availability changes by region. A tub of butter sold under the same name in one state may come from a different dairy with a slightly different formulation than the same name sold 3 states over. Ingredient lists change over time too. A company can reformulate a product, and the label you remember from a year ago may not match the tub on the shelf today. So everything I am describing here is what I read on the specific packages in front of me, on this specific day, and I want you checking your own label rather than assuming mine matches yours indefinitely. That is not me hedging. That is just how labels actually work. Now let's talk about the brands that earned a place in my own kitchen, because the goal here was never to tear down an entire dairy case. It was to sort out which tubs deserve trust and which ones are simply borrowing trust they have not earned. Kerrygold is the first. The ingredient list on the package I am holding shows pasteurized cream and salt, nothing else. And the colour of the butter itself is noticeably deeper than most American butters sitting next to it on the shelf, which traces back to the grass-fed diet of the cows it comes from, rather than anything added afterward. What makes Kerrygold different is not a marketing claim. It is the simplicity of that ingredient list combined with a visibly different product. And that combination is rare enough at the dairy case that it earns specific mention. This is what makes it different. The honest ingredients on the label are cream and salt, and nothing more. It earns its place in the pantry because the label matches exactly what butter has always meant, with no qualifiers required anywhere on the package. And because what your eyes see in the colour matches what your hand reads on the ingredient list. Land O'Lakes is the second. The ingredient list I am reading shows cream and salt in the salted version, which again is the basic structure expected of real butter. This brand has been a familiar name at the dairy case for generations, and what I found reading the label directly is that the familiarity is backed up by an ingredient list that has not drifted into oil blends or additives over the years the way some legacy brands quietly do. What makes it different from some of the brands earlier in this video is simply that there is nothing hiding on the back of the package that contradicts what the front implies. The honest ingredients are exactly what they should be. It earns its place in the pantry because there is no gap between the reputation and the label, and that gap is exactly what I am looking for every time I pick something up. Challenge butter is the third. The package I'm holding lists cream and salt as well. And what stood out to me reading this one specifically is how consistently plain the ingredient list has stayed across the different product lines this brand sells, from the standard salted butter to its other dairy products on the same shelf. What makes it different is less about any single standout ingredient and more about consistency. A brand that has not added anything unnecessary across multiple products is a brand whose labelling habits I trust a little more by default, because a pattern across many products tells you more than a single good label ever could. The honest ingredients on the label are what you would expect from real butter. Full stop. It earns its place in the pantry because nothing about reading it raised a single question, start to finish. Here is the larger principle underneath everything I just walked through. A package can say almost anything it wants on the front, within the limits of the law, but the ingredient list on the back is where the actual truth of a product lives. Judging a brand by its reputation, its price, or its packaging colour is judging it by the wrong evidence entirely. Judging it by what is actually printed in that short paragraph of ingredients is the only method that has never once let me down, in a dairy case or anywhere else in that store. Before you go, I want you to do something. Walk to your own refrigerator after this video ends. Pick up whichever tub from this list is already sitting in your kitchen and turn it over. Read the ingredient list out loud if you have to. Then come back and tell me in the comments what it actually says, because I want to know whether your tub matches the one I described here, or whether your region's version tells a slightly different story than mine did today. So here is where both of those open loops close. The brand that legally cannot call itself butter without a qualifier was I can't believe it's not butter, sitting 2 shelves away from real butter in nearly identical packaging. And the 3 brands I would buy again without hesitation are Kerrygold, Land O'Lakes, and Challenge, with Kerrygold being the one that genuinely surprised me once I saw the ingredient list matched the reputation completely. I read every word on every label today, the same way I learned to read a label a long time ago, back before any of this had a brand name attached to it at all. That is the whole verdict.